Hey! Hey there! Today I'm going to show you guys my shadow sword build, explain how swords in general work, and my thoughts about it. Both manas and shadow are very difficult to farm, and the most annoying thing is farming the materials for them. It took me roughly 8 hours to level this sword up to 5 without counting the research time. So, my apologies if I wasn't able to make a video about this sooner. Shadow's ability launches you at the distance while damaging enemies you cut across. At the end point, you will then deal damage in a radius. The distance covered will depend on how long you hold down your aim button. Upgrading Shadow's ability doesn't increase anything. It only reduces the ability gauge cost. This means that you will be able to use the unique ability more often when the ability level is high. My problem with this is that swords have a statistics called continuous chance in damage. This is actually just multi-hit for swords and it is calculated and works the same. However, this does not affect the unique ability. You will actually deal more damage using the sword normally than using the ability. Right now, it's just used for movement. Another stat that might be confusing to people is the pierce stat. This simply just means that your damage will be reduced based on the pierce rate the more the enemy is hit by the sword. How this works is that, if you have 5 targets hit by a slash, one target will get the full 100% damage, the next will get 99% damage, the next will get 95% damage, the fourth target will get 91% damage, and so forth. The second target doesn't immediately receive the 4% damage reduction, and I don't know why. It works the same everywhere. You might ask, what happens if I hit 1,000 enemies at the same time? Will I deal 0% damage on the 1,000th enemy? You actually will not. There is a maximum reduction to your damage, and it won't go lesser than that regardless of how many enemies you hit with a slash. The reduction to damage will keep applying up to this number right here. In this case, my damage won't go below 50% even when I hit 1,000 enemies at the same slash. Shadow also has a bonus damage multiplier to Legion of Immortality champions. Sword's attack speed is also calculated differently and it is actually quite simple. In terms of guns, fire rate reduces the interval between shots and not shots per second. Attack speed on swords calculate how many slashes you dish out per second. Fire rate stat like from Shell Crusher doesn't affect the attack speed. Swords has its own new statistics separate from firearm, and it's called melee weapon. It can be melee weapon critical hit rate, melee weapon critical damage, or even melee weapon attack. This is why swords doesn't get critical hit rate bonuses from descendants like Haley, Valby, Blair, and even Sharon. Swords also doesn't work on Serena's 4th ability bonus damage. Swords will receive bonuses only if the skills specifically mention melee weapon attack or damage. In Serena's case, it only mentions firearm. This also means that until we have a descendant that boosts the specific sword critical stat, Shadow cannot be built into a critical weapon. Non-crit swords cannot be built into crit regardless of whether you use Haley or any other critical descendants. Swords also does not trigger the focus rounds on inversion. You can also block using the sword and it increases your damage reduction. There is a gauge that gets reduced initially when you block, continuous gauge consumption the longer you hold the block, and gauge recovery upon a successful block. In Shadow's case, the damage reduction is 35%. One more thing before the Shadow build, using a sword doesn't affect your grappling movement. The sub-attack on guns is just an animation. Sword still works the same and it still covers the same distance regardless whether you block or slash to cancel the grappling animation. However, swords doesn't have any precision cores for sprint speed and grappling cooldown reduction. This is the Shadow build. Right now, there is no build diversity for swords, only damage optimization. Because again, you can't build Shadow into crit and you can't build Shadow for Serena. This build here dishes out the highest DPS for this weapon, but you have 2 free slots to tweak to your liking. You can replace whichever for range, max impact rounds, or minimum piercing modifier. I haven't had any problems with ammo yet, but you could be. Sword Dance is there just for the attack speed bonus, and you don't even have to level it up for the crit rate. Readjustments are pretty straightforward, but the course could be tricky because you need to balance out the continuous damage and chance. Going 2 damage and 1 chance will give you the overall better DPS. So far, I haven't thought of a case where I'm using this sword aside from role-playing. It does some decent damage, but what swords in general lack are movement and a bit more area of effect capabilities. And those lacking aspects should have been compensated into a bit more damage. I wouldn't use a sword when I'm using Inez, Freyna, or even Bunny. Same goes to using Restored Relic for Glade and swords. I am having fun using this on Keelan though, and I hope that the other sword is a bit more promising. That's it for this video guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!